Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Walk and Talk, the podcast designed for dog lovers on the move who want to keep their minds as active as their dogs when they're out on their daily ramble. And this week I've got what I really hope is going to prove to be a truly fascinating little chat about all the things I think you might not have known about the amazing relationship between you and your dog. Well, I think it's fascinating anyway, so please do get your lead on your dog and your wellies on your feet, and let's head outside and get stuck into a juicy one this week, diving into a topic that is not only fascinating, can we say fascinating 3 times in the intro? Yeah, I say we can for this one. Not only fascinating, but heartwarming too, and full of all the feel-goods, and that is the science behind why humans and dogs, as we are all so strongly already aware, are so uniquely bonded to each other. As a prime example, can I just hit you up top before you've even got your dog's lead on with the fact that when your dog gazes into your eyes, their body releases oxytocin, which is often referred to as the love hormone. And it's the same feel-good hormone that bonds human mothers to their babies. And even more incredible for us is that we release it too. There's this mutual hormonal feedback loop that crosses the boundary between two species happening just from us looking at each other, which in my opinion is amazing enough on its own. But actually, there was a study carried out in 2015 that found that domesticated dogs actually release more oxytocin when engaging with their human than they do when interacting with another dog. Now, that's not just sweet, that's literally revolutionary because it shows us that dogs aren't just social animals. They're social specifically with us. They're now biologically wired to form emotional bonds with the humans in a way that goes beyond most other animals and incredibly goes beyond the emotional bonds they form within their own species. So just to make that relatable and useful for a second, if you have a dog and they have separation anxiety, say, don't just think that getting a second dog will fix that problem, because they're not just struggling because they are alone in the home. 9 times out of 10, they're struggling specifically because they miss you. And for any dog owners who feel guilty because maybe they own a nervous or reactive dog, so their dog can't go and, romp at the park with all the other dogs that get let off lead to play together. I hear it said quite a lot, actually, when dogs are playing together at the park. This is what dogs are supposed to do. I'm so glad he gets to play with all these other dogs, yada, yada, yada. He needs this. It's natural for them to do this. Well, it's lovely if your dog enjoys doing that, but don't ever think that your dog is missing out on anything by not having those relationships with other dogs, because our domesticated dogs are literally wired to have all their social needs met by their relationships with humans. So if you own one dog, you do not need to get a second dog just for your first dog's welfare. You are fully equipped to meet all of those needs yourself. Now, the interesting thing about this is that our dogs don't think we're all the same animal. They're not confused in any way about the species overlap here. Dogs know that we are not dogs. Researchers have demonstrated the fact that dogs don't treat humans like conspecifics, which is basically just the fancy word for members of the same species. When they're with another dog, their communication strategy is totally different. Their body language, the way they use eye contact, everything changes. But when they interact with us, they actively modify their behavior. They make more eye contact. They use different vocalizations and they adapt based on our human cues. And puppies learn this stuff really early through socialization and honestly, a lot of trial and error. It's classical conditioning at work at its finest. So if you've ever worried your dog's treating you like a weird fairless pack mate, you can absolutely let that one go, which means you can also fully park any weird notions of how to communicate with your dog from oh, I don't know, let's say an early noughties dog trainer who spent a lot of time on TV teaching owners how to mimic weird dog communication moves with their hands so they could bite, I say bite in inverted commas, their dogs to communicate with them effectively. You can park that. Your dog knows that you're a human. They know that you're not a dog. So they know that the communication strategy between the two of you is going to be different than it would be between two dogs. And they act and communicate accordingly. So, okay, now we've established that we don't need to pretend to be dogs or mimic dog behaviors to communicate something to our dogs. Let's talk about how clever dogs have actually become at communicating with us. So, unlike wolves or even other domesticated animals, because obviously dogs aren't our only pets, are they? But dogs have evolved specific interspecies communication skills that are uniquely relevant to human beings. And one of the biggest and most interesting of these, well, I think it's fascinating anyway, is their use of eye contact. Because domesticated dogs will literally seek out our gaze, which is something that's actually incredibly rare in the animal kingdom. Most animals will avoid direct eye contact because it's seen as threatening or confrontational. Even between two dogs, a face-to-face stare is usually an invitation for conflict, but your dog and you, that's a completely different story. And you can probably recollect right now, if you think back, plenty of instances in which your dog has gazed lovingly into your eyes like you're the protagonist in a Jane Austen novel. I'll wager you probably had something really delicious in your hand or on your plate, but regardless of his motivation, your dog knows what pushes your bonding buttons. And so, even though for his species, that behavior communicates something quite different, he will happily seek out your gaze and lock it because he knows that between the two of you, it's an entirely different kind of interaction. Now, speaking of your dog's eyes, amazingly, honestly, I find this truly amazing. There's even research showing that over their thousands of years of domestication, dogs have actually evolved a special eye muscle purely to enable better communication with humans because it allows them to make more expressive faces. There was actually a study in 2019 that found that shelter dogs who frequently use these eye muscles to contract and raise their inner eyebrows, these dogs were adopted quicker. And the hypothesis is that these faces that these dogs are able to pull because of these muscles that have evolved that are simply not present in wolves manipulate the human preference for baby-like, infant-like features in the face. And so they tug at our human caregiving instincts and trigger this nurturing, lovey-dovey response in us. So everybody's heard the saying puppy dog eyes, right? It's a real thing. It's emotional manipulation and it's so effective. And they know what they're doing with it. Now, here's where it gets properly adorable when it comes to you and your dog gazing lovingly at each other. Like I mentioned at the top of the episode, mutual eye contact between you and your dog causes both of you to release oxytocin, the same hormone that bonds mothers with their babies. And honestly, it's one of my favorite pieces of dog science ever. Your dog feels that love chemically, neurologically, physically, just by being with you. And they get more of a hormonal high from bonding with you than with other dogs, which is just huge. So if you genuinely have ever worried that your dog needs more dog friends to be fulfilled, this is your permission slip to stop stressing. Playtime with you, training games, enrichment, snuggles, those things are not just making do, just covering base. They're biologically designed to be rewarding and to provide all the social fulfillment your dog needs. And whilst we're on the topic of social fulfillment for dogs, let's challenge another myth while we're here, because it's one that can cause a great deal of problems and angst for so many dog owners. And that's the idea that dogs should be dog social, for want of a better phrase, with every other dog that they meet. Now, in reality, dogs evolved in tight-knit social groups, which were actually usually family units. Think wolves in a pack, which in no way actually resembles a free-for-all of canine meet and greets like you would see happening at the local park. And David Meck's later work on wild wolves, Meck is the infamous wolf researcher who first gave us all of the alpha stuff a few decades ago, which he has since rescinded. So once he'd moved past the mistakes of the captive wolf studies that erroneously gave us all those alpha theories, which I'll go into one day, but that's a longer chat for a different episode, right? But his wild wolf studies showed that those packs, they weren't made up of random individuals that had come together to form a pack at all. They were families in much the same way that we as human families live together and raise our young and form these family units. And that familiarity between those dogs in that family unit, those wolves, bred safety and cooperation in the same way that it does with us as humans. Now, what's missing from your dog's social encounters on his daily dog walks or romps at the park is that pack familiarity. In other words, expecting your dog to enjoy every single other dog they meet is like expecting you to be best friends with every stranger at the bus stop or to stop and have an in-depth chat with everybody you stroll past at Tesco's. It's just not realistic, is it? Or fair. Now, I appreciate that lots of you probably do have friendly, lovely dogs who do playfully accept every dog they meet, and that is absolutely fab for you. But if you don't have that kind of a dog, that's perfectly fine. Your dog doesn't have to or need to interact with those dogs to be socially fulfilled. If your dog actually much prefers you and their little inner circle of people that they know, that's okay. And actually, it's entirely normal. Now, here's a story that feels like something straight out of a fairy tale, but it's real science, I promise. So, back in the 1950s, there was a Russian geneticist. Am I going to try and pronounce his name? Dmitry Belyaev? Yeah, I think that's legit correct. So anyway, this Russian geneticist ran an experiment around the concept of animal domestication to explore what actually happens when you breed animals purely with the intention of developing friendliness toward humans. So imagine we're putting aside any other motivating factors for mankind's desire to integrate animals into our society, like using them for guarding or hunting or any kind of work like that, that obviously does influence some of the behaviors present in our domesticated dogs today. And we're parking that and we're looking purely at intentionally developing and optimizing the human animal relationship. So he took a group of wild silver foxes, which was a species not known for being particularly friendly at all. And generation after generation, he only bred the ones who were the calmest and least fearful around people. That was it. No training, no socialization, just selecting a gentle temperament. And within just a few generations, the foxes didn't just become more cuddly, but they genuinely started changing physically, even though none of the selection, remember, had been done based on any of these physicalities at all, just their personalities. But their ears got floppy, their tails started wagging, and they developed puppy-like faces and even spotted fur patterns, just like dogs. And this became known as domestication syndrome. And it showed us that selecting for tameness literally reshapes an animal body and brain. It softens the stress response, it enhances social behavior, and brings out these irresistible baby animal features that we humans feel naturally drawn to nurture. So, why does this even matter? Why is it relevant? Well, it gives us a really insightful window into how dogs may have evolved too, not by being forced into domestication, but because the friendliest, most human tolerant wolves chose to be near us and we chose them back. So, when you look at your dog's floppy ears or you feel their warm gaze on your face, remember that sweetness, that bond between you, it's not just trained, learned behavior. It's literally in their DNA. And it didn't just stop at floppy ears and waggy tails. That genetic shift toward connection, toward cooperation with humans, literally rewired our dogs' brains. There was a study published, I think in 2014, where they used MRI scans to look at the brains of dogs whilst the dogs were listening to human voices. And what they found was honestly kind of beautiful, because they discovered that dogs have voice sensitive regions in their brains. I mean, human voice sensitive, that are incredibly similar to our own, and that these areas respond not just to what human voices say, but to how they say it. They light up in response to happy tones and soothing tones in the same parts of the brain that light up in humans, which suggests that actually dogs and humans have grown alongside each other for so long that our brains have literally started syncing up in how we connect with one another. So when your dog hears your voice and comes trotting over with that soft wagging tail and that little spark in their eyes, they're not just reacting to a command or hoping for a treat. I mean, they may well be doing those things, but their brain is literally tuned in to your emotion as well. And that's not just a response to training, that's evolution. So here's what I want you to take away from this episode. Number one, you are not just your dog's owner. You really are their family, their secure base, their favorite playmate, and their best buddy. They absolutely know that you are not a dog, and they adore you regardless. And that bond between the two of you is incredibly real, legit, and fully science-backed. Number two, it's okay if your dog prefers you over the dog park. It's okay if they just want to chill at home with their human people. That's not weird at all. That's biological, normal, and completely natural. Number three, if your only focus is on bonding-based activities, think walks, training, play, enrichment, you are already 100% smashing dog ownership, okay? You never need to get caught up in the myth that a well-socialized dog means one who plays with every dog they see. Your dog is 100% satisfied with you. End of, mic drop, main takeaway from this episode. So, if this episode gave you all the warm fuzzy feelings about your dog and how utterly amazing they are, please go and take a picture of them and tag me in it on Instagram at Listen Dog Training so I can share it, because my main goal in life is reigniting that spark of joy between dogs and their owners. So I would be utterly overjoyed to hear that this little micro episode had done that for you. And if you are now feeling motivated and inspired to do more with your dog, now you know just how awesome they think spending time with you is, you can check out my website at listendogtraining.com, where I have a wealth of different training packs filled with games and exercises and activities for you and your dog that you can download and explore together. Or you can come and find me on TikTok or Instagram at Listen Dog Training for oodles of free tips and tricks, as well as all the daily stories of me and my own dogs doing life together. But for now, I think I've definitely chatted dogs for long enough and probably bored you with science and studies, so I shall leave you to enjoy the rest of your dog walk, and I'll catch up with you same time next week for another episode of The Walk and Talk.